Hey everybody, this is Perch. I get asked from time to time, and recently, which is why I'm making this video. What would I do? What would be like the things you would do if you could just change things about comics? What would be the things that you would change? And the person who wrote the question immediately like gave me a couple answers, like would you get rid of all the Democrats? Would you? It's like I always see these like this almost like fill in the blank type things, and the answer is no, none of those things. It's weird. I recently rediscovered. I go to what's the site Kiwi Farms, which is fine. It's a site, it's a message board and everything, but I don't go to it regularly. And so it's always unnerving, by the way, when you go someplace and then you see a lot of conversation about you that's been going on for like months. And it's like, oh, there's all kinds of conversations there, and it's people analyzing stuff like, Perch is a finch sitter. That's sure, why not? Perch said this, Perch said that. So it's just weird. It's like this phantom limb. It's some other person there. It's crazy. What was the one I appreciated? One comment was some guy rambling while driving around. It's like, well, I'm driving around right now and kind of rambling. So you got me there. I'm I mean, sure. It's like, but you're the one listening, huh? No, anyway. But in terms of what to change about comics, I'll give you my perspective because I think a lot of people have in their heads very kind of what would feel good immediately kind of answers. Like I would fire this person and fire that person and clean house. There's always like clean house. I would go in there and clean house, and change the price and do this and do that. What I would do is a little bit more kind of long term thinking, which, by the way, if I'm being fair about it, could be the wrong way to go. It could be, so when you run a business, there's typically two ways to run a startup or to run a small business. You can run it for what they call a near-term horizon, which would be 12 months. This is a strategy of running a business. You're going to sell it. If you create a startup and your exit strategy is to be sold within 3 years, then you typically have very, near-term horizon strategies that you're putting into play. You won't worry about things like longevity and infrastructure. You'll be going for a near-term outcome. And then there's a different way of thinking, which is to say, this business may be around for a while, so I'd love to have the company bought and make a bunch of money on my investment in a year, but I'm going to plan and run a company, you know, as if I had to stick it out for 10 years. And I don't want it to implode. I don't want to have to go get loans. I don't want to have to sell off a stake in the company to a VC or an investor because I didn't plan ahead and now I need cash. Like there's a lot of reasons why you can think one way or another. I'm more the second type. If it's not clear from these videos and everything else, I'm more the long-term thinker kind of person. What was one of the other mails I got? My email got very polluted over the last 2 weeks after a live stream a couple weeks ago. And I got one guy's like, doesn't it bother you that you don't have as many subscribers as Yellow Flash? Yellow Flash 2. And I'm like, I didn't know there was a Yellow Flash 2. But no, not really. I don't think about things that way. I don't think about number of subscribers. So it's like, if I did, I mean, I'd be very depressed right now, right? Because like, I mean, forget him. Like Comic Storian and some of these people, like hundreds and thousands of subscribers. Like, I mean, Christ, I'd suck. I really like Ozzy Man. I like Uncle Roger. These guys have millions of subs. I suck compared to those guys. So I'm very depressed. I mean, they're doing much better than I am. They've gone viral. Anyway, I'm not going to go viral doing recordings from a car on a headset. That's not and questionable audio skills. It's not going to work. Uh, anyway, what would I do for comics? I would think long term. So I think that in order to have a stable business, I would look at the employees and I'd look at a better package for the people who are working in my company. Specifically, I would look for incentive programs where when they are successful, and when I mean they are successful, I mean the product being shipped to customers is successful, that there would be incentives for those employees, for those people, and even freelancers. I'm very much, and this is just my background of doing a lot of work in tech. I'm very much of the mentality of incentive programs where if the company is successful, if the individual is successful, they should get a bigger reward. So, for example, if you're a creator or you're a creative team, whatever it happens to be, and you're working on a title and your title becomes a hit, then you should get more of that back end money. And I know comics does work that way. When I say comics, by the way, this is too broad a term. I mean, what am I talking about? Am I talking about Scholastic, Marvel, DC, Indies, Image? What am I talking about? I'm really talking about the big two for the moment because that was how the original question was phrased, and that's often when people think about U.S. comics. You think about Marvel, DC. I would definitely have more incentive programs. I'd have for the editors. I'd have for the writers, the artists. I think it would be a healthier system if the people working on the comics had some incentives based on how things are going. One thing I wouldn't do is I wouldn't keep the numbers of the comics hidden. I think there's a lot of problems that come in when the people, the creative team working on the comic, are not aware of the sales. And to be honest, there's not really a good reason why that should be hidden from the creative team anyway. I think, in fact, it goes along with the entire incentive. Incentives can be monetary, can be financial. There can be benefits around like health insurance, all that kind of stuff. But there can also be basic morale. And I think if you're working on a title and the title is selling 100,000 copies, I don't think you should find out about it for the first time from Perch's channel, which happens more often than you might realize. There's been people who've done interviews with me who've reached out and I've talked to on the side. I mean, a decent amount of them, where they're thanking me because I'm giving them numbers that their editors or the companies they're working for aren't giving them, which is always kind of shocking to me because there's no reason to hide those numbers. I'll give you a hypothetical just to kind of be honest and on board with it. Scott Snyder has never asked me for the numbers of his titles. I'm assuming because of the relative importance of Snyder to DC and everything else. I'm sure he probably either has the numbers or could get his hands on them if he wanted to. But Snyder has not asked me for numbers. So it would be weird if Snyder, who, for example, did this Batman run with Greg Capullo, where he can boast that his sales were over 100,000 copies for his run. It would be weird if DC kept that a secret from Snyder. That would be something to make Snyder feel proud, for the creative team to be happy about. It would also send a message that this is the kind of great outcome we want for our books. There's no reason to keep those secret. I think in that scenario, you would want the editorial team to be aware of the numbers. You'd want them to be released as so people know what's going on. I want a lot of transparency around that kind of stuff. And you might ask yourself, why would that matter? If you're going to run a company, you're telling me you would be transparent about the sales numbers? Like, how is that going to make a better company? Like, that's a really dumb thing to start with. But I think the opposite. I think being transparent with the numbers starts to create a better culture. It creates a better litmus test, a better bar for what is successful and what is not. I would start to build a culture around here's what financial success looks like for the company. We're not going to have creators kind of guess at 20,000 is a magical cutoff for cancellation. You talk to a lot of creators, they'll say things like that, like 20,000 is kind of the bad number. But they're getting to that based on kind of what they've heard from other creators at cons and kind of almost this kind of tribal knowledge, and that's not a good number. It's not a good number, yes, but that's not really a measure of anything. If you're doing a comic that's selling 20,000 in the direct market, but is selling massive numbers in trades and on Amazon, then that's important context for that information. And if you're being transparent with your creative team, your editorial, or everything else, that's going to help you make better decisions as a company. It's going to maybe as an editor managing several books, you might say, hey, I'm going to think about this book for the direct market. I'm going to think about this book for the trade market. And I'm just going to start to parse the material out that way. That would be smart business. I think that there's something to be said that a lot of people at the big two, a lot of the creators, the editors, they do not have good business insight. And so they make, questionable business decisions at various times. And I think, that you want a better staff of people, but if you want them to make better business decisions, you got to give them better information. And by the way, why I said this is more of a medium-term plan than a long-term plan, is that if you are doing this consistently in a healthy way, it is going to generate the behavior and the people you want. Yeah, we can speculate of saying some decisions made at comic book companies are made for ideological reasons as opposed to fulfilling customer need or anything else. Well, maybe that's true, maybe it isn't. It's a little bit hard to really know. We're guessing at why those decisions get made. If suddenly the business information is transparent, is clear within the company, then it becomes very clear when you're either living by those business metrics or whether you are going off and doing some other random thing that contradicts that information. So rather than sit here and speculate that it's ideology driving decisions, let's make it clear what success really looks like. Let's be transparent with where things are at. And that's going to generate better behavior, or at least it's going to really clarify when the behavior is wrong. If an editorial team or creative team does make decisions to a comic book that are, in opposition to sales, it's going to become very clear because you're publicizing and you're being very clear about the numbers. That's what I think would be healthy. So that's one thing I would do. I'd definitely do that internally, and frankly, I would do that externally as well. I would try and become a trusted company for when we say here's a bestseller, we're not full of crap. Here's the numbers to back it up. I think that's a way to kind of make it more clear to the customer base. By the way, there are customers who get really pissed when a title gets canceled, like what happened with X Factor. If you're being clear and transparent about the numbers, then then nobody's confused. I know there was people were pissed when Cable was canceled, and again, the numbers were very low. We actually had numbers pre-pandemic that showed that title was not doing well. So if you're clear and you're open about it, then creators are not going to be angry when when something gets canceled. Fans are not going to be angry. Creators, everybody's going to understand. Hey, here was where we needed to hit financially for this title to be successful, and it didn't. Therefore, it just makes the conversation much easier. I would definitely do those things. So these are all the boring business stuff. And then there's a big batch of stuff that I think is obvious. Yes, I would look for price breaks, like we've talked about in previous shows. Definitely, I think price breaks are important to grow the market. I would absolutely look to get distribution outside of the direct market, not removed from the direct market, but in addition to the direct market. Absolutely. I would look at. I definitely would try and keep creative teams on books for more than 2 to 3 issues. So part of, I think, being transparent with the numbers and being more kind of clear about what's going on is I would if I'm going to launch a new title, I wouldn't launch it unless I had the creative team locked up for 12 issues minimum. It's ridiculous in some ways to even say 12. I would, if you're going to launch a new title, then I would have some good business metrics and analysis to know if the title was going to launch it has the best chance of success. If it didn't, I wouldn't launch the title. I would launch it with a lot of belief, understanding, and proof that it was going to work. And then because I had that, I would lock up a creative team for a longer period of time. I would try and create incentives for that creative team to push the book and market and sell it along with the company, so that if the book was successful, then everybody wins. A lot of people in comic books, and I think this is one of the wrong lessons learned from the early '90s, they would be willing to stay with a book for longer. The creators are not looking to just randomly hop from title to title. There is a sense of kind of built-in loyalty that creators would like to have for books. If anything, it's the publishers that are eroding that that connection that creators naturally have. Creators want to be loyal. They want to have long runs. They want to have some certainty in their life. That's what kind of they naturally gear toward. There was this belief, due to image, that if creators got popular, they would immediately hold you hostage for more money and would immediately jump to a different place. Now, if a title is really successful, yeah, the creative team will want more money, but frankly, as a publisher, you should want to give them that money. If they're doing a good job and they're bringing in, customers and, cash, you should incent them to stay. You should give them raises. You should do all those things. That would be the smart thing to do. I think if you're worried that the second any creator, any artist gets real popular, they're going to hop over and start doing for stuff for image, well, I think there are very basic things you can do to incent them to stay and stick with you. I don't think creators naturally want to bounce around. They would prefer to stay. So give them stock, give them cash bonuses, give them reasons why, if they're very successful, they will continue to be rewarded. The one thing that Marvel and DC can offer that the independents can't is, yeah, granted, you're working on somebody else's properties for sure, but you're also benefiting from these, world renowned brands. And that's going to help. There's an ego boost there. There's an opportunity to be more successful. So align the incentives and you'll get there. Anyway, those are the things I would change. I mean, there's a million more, but I would really, really, really try and line these things up. I think if you did that, one, I don't think it'd be that hard. Two, I think it'd be much more healthy for the business. And three, it would the entire system would be better. Anyway, I'm sure you've got ideas. I'm sure you've got different ideas. I'm sure you've got reasons why my ideas suck. You can put them in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and thanks for listening.